A clay bowl trembles in her hands, carved not by a craftsman but by repetition, by hunger, by waiting, by cold. Her fingers are raw with winter's breath, blue beneath cracked nails, gripping the rim like it holds her tethered to the earth. The fog of her breath lingers in the air, ghosting around her face like a spirit not yet gone. She does not speak. She rarely does. In the manor kitchens, silence is safer than voice, and obedience feeds longer than rebellion. The broth thickens with the patience of centuries, leeks floating like tired saints, onions dissolving into water scented with ash and iron. No meat, not for her. Not today. Not ever. The cook stirs with slow devotion, whispering a prayer to St. Bridget with every circle of the wooden ladle. The saint, they say, once gave away her father's sword to a beggar and turned water into milk. But miracles don't visit kitchen girls. Outside, the world is stiff with frost. Hooves stamp in the stables, crows call from the bare trees. And somewhere behind leaded windows, tapestries flutter in warmer rooms. There the women wear fur-lined sleeves and speak in soft tones of quince jelly and almond paste. Here the girl waits barefoot on cracked stone, her hem stiff with yesterday's mud, her breath the only warmth she owns. She dreams of butter, of biting into cheese so fresh it still remembers the cow, of rye bread thick enough to hold in both hands, not the stale crusts scraped from the Lord's table. But hunger has stripped dreams into shadows. She dreams now only of not dreaming at all, of quiet fullness, of sleep without ache. Her mother used to hum while slicing apples, thin and round as coins. That was before the fire took her, before the fever took her sister, before the steward came to collect the debts, and the girl became the payment. She learned the rules quickly. Never eat before the bell, never take more than offered, never lick the spoon, always curtsy when bread is handed down. Always say thank you, even when the barley tastes of dust. Her life is measured in mouthfuls, in what she is allowed to carry, what she must surrender, and what she pretends not to want. The bell rings across the courtyard, sharp as iron splitting stone. It could be the abbess calling for her stewed figs, or it could be justice, a girl caught with stolen oats, a boy who dared to speak back. The bell never says which, it only demands. She flinches as if struck. Her shoulders hunch, instinctive. The bowl nearly spills, and for a heartbeat she grips it tighter, as if the hot barley could anchor her to the day, to her body, to a reason not to vanish. A draft pushes through the kitchen's cracked wall, carrying with it the scent of wet hay and smoke. She shivers, pulling her shawl tighter, rough wool against skin rubbed raw from scrubbing flagstones. Behind her, the cook sighs, already ladling the next bowl, already turning away. The girl steps aside and finds her place. By the far hearth where heat barely reaches, she kneels. She bows her head. She eats. The pottage is thin, but she swallows it, slowly, reverently. Each bite is a prayer, each chew an act of endurance. Her hunger is not just for food, it is for kindness, for safety, for someone to notice her enough to call her by name. But names fade, like warmth, like mothers, like summer. She has become only what she carries, the bucket, the bowl, the silence, and still she eats, slowly as if swallowing sorrow shaped like barley. Somewhere down the hall, a door creaks open. Footsteps, a murmur. Perhaps the next bell will ring. Perhaps she will be called to scrub the mistress's chamber pots. Perhaps someone will scream, but for now, she finishes the last of her broth. She licks the spoon, just once. And it is in that moment, small, defiant, unseen, that something shifts. Not loudly. Not enough to be punished. But enough that later tonight, when the hearth is dark and the wind claws at the shutter, she will remember that she dared. She will remember the taste of hot barley on her tongue. She will whisper to no one, I was here. And somewhere beyond the manor walls, where bells do not toll and no one kneels to eat, a blackbird lifts from a frost-covered branch and disappears into the white. The bells do not chime, they gnaw. The sound burrows deep into marrow, echoing through corridors lined with pale saints and darker silences. In the convent's heart, where stone meets shadow, Sister Ellsworth kneels before the altar, her breath shallow, her body folded into the shape of surrender. Candle smoke coils above her like a serpent of devotion, clinging to her veil, her skin, her lungs. It is cold, the kind of cold that never truly leaves the bones, no matter how many prayers are whispered. Her stomach aches, not just from emptiness, but from the ritual of it, the expectation that absence is holy, that to be nearer to God is to vanish from oneself. She has eaten nothing since the evening broth, thin lentils and a heel of dark bread soaked in silence. This morning, nothing but water and the ghost of boiled cabbage in the air. The rule of St. Benedict does not spare the body. It tames it, subdues it. Fasting is not punishment. It is proof. Proof that she is not her hunger, not her longing, not her flesh, only a vessel. She folds her hands across her lap. The skin there is cracked from lie and laundering, the fingertips worn raw from scrubbing the blood of saints' relics off linen cloth. Between those hands rests a dried pear, wrinkled, darkened with time, soft at its core. A forbidden gift. A kindness, quietly offered by the sacristan, who pressed it into her palm without words. As if handing over a piece of contraband too sacred for the light, she has not bitten it. Not yet. It waits like her. Hidden, beyond the cloister walls, the feast of St. Martin rises in smoke and laughter. In the town below, geese roast on iron spits, and cider froths in wooden cups. Children run through the muddy streets with bread in their hands, still warm from the oven. But inside these walls, indulgence is heresy. Pleasure is guilt wearing honey's disguise. The sisters eat in rows, heads bowed. As one among them reads aloud the lives of martyrs flayed for their defiance, burned for their devotion. Elswith swallows her food like penance, each bite a death, each chew a muting. She remembers, though she is not supposed to, the taste of her mother's oatcakes. Baked thick, laced with honey, wrapped in a linen cloth still damp with steam. That memory lives where God cannot reach. A corner of her soul untouched by incense or Latin. Her mother wept the day she was given to the church, but said nothing. The debt was too large, the dowry too distant. And so, Elswith entered this stone world at 13, a child carved into a vessel. There are no mirrors in the convent. She has not seen her own face in years. Only the reflection in cold water, quick and fragmented, like a soul glimpsed through cracked glass. But she feels her body still, the swell of her ribs when she breathes too deep, the curve of her shoulders under the wool habit, to the ache in her knees when she kneels too long. She is not supposed to feel, but she does. She returns to her cell, a narrow chamber no wider than a coffin. The walls are bare save for a wooden crucifix and a single sprig of dried lavender pinned beside it. The window is too small for the sun to enter. She sits on her straw mat and unwraps the dried pear from a cloth. Her fingers hesitate. She touches it, holds it to her nose. It smells of sweetness and dust. There is a knock. Soft, then gone. A warning. She hides the fruit again. Tomorrow is another fast. The hunger will deepen. The voice of God, they say, speaks loudest in the emptiness. But tonight her own voice whispers louder. Not in rebellion. Not yet. Just a breath, barely shaped into words. Mater me, ignos mihi. Forgive me. And the pear remains uneaten. Not because she fears damnation, but because its sweetness holds too much memory. It is not food. It is a fragment of her before. Outside, the wind moans against the shutters like a morning chant. Somewhere, a sister cries out in her sleep, and Elswith lies still, listening, waiting, not for salvation, but for a silence that does not consume her. And in that silence, something begins to shift. Like a bird twitching behind the ribs, not yet strong enough to fly, but awake. The hearth is gone cold, but the silence still crackles. In the dim light of the single rushlight, the woman stirs the broth again, though it no longer needs stirring. Her fingers move by habit, slow, circular, deliberate, like the rituals of mourning or of prayer. Outside, the wind howls through the loose thatch, finding its way inside through every split beam and broken chink. Winter presses in like a judgment. Still the spoon moves. The girls lie tangled together in a threadbare blanket, their limbs thin as saplings, their dreams empty of sweetness. The oldest clutches her sister's hand beneath the cloth. The middle one mutters in sleep, her feet curled toward the fading embers, as if they might remember warmth. The youngest, barely weaned, murmurs for milk that does not come. The mother listens. She always listens. For mice in the walls, for wolves in the fields, aid, for the cough that won't leave the eldest, for hoofbeats that mean the steward returns, or worse, the reeve. Her ears have become as sharp as her stomach is hollow. She has learned to measure danger in footsteps, in silence, in the way a man slams a door when there's no more bread to take. The pot on the fire holds nothing but cabbage water and a prayer. Once there were leeks. Once there was barley. Once there were hens. The hens were claimed for tax-feathered penance for a debt she cannot read. Her husband, dead and buried with a cracked spoon, left her more silence than protection. The priest did not bless him. There was no bell rung, no cross carved. Only dirt in her hands and the sound of flies. She dips a finger into the broth and places it against her lips. It's warm, just warm enough to pretend it holds comfort. Then she ladles it into 3 uneven bowls, splinters biting into her palms. She whispers, not to God but to memory, her mother's voice soft and sure, "Eat, little dove. Tomorrow we will have more." She lies to them without guilt, not to deceive, but to protect. What else is a mother in a world where mercy belongs to coin and crowns? She smooths the youngest girl's hair back from her brow and hums something without tune. The girl murmurs again, "Milk." The woman smiles, a fragile, holy thing. "Tomorrow, my girl," she says, brushing a kiss onto her forehead. "Tomorrow the cow will give again, but the cow is dead, stolen or starved. She cannot remember which. What she remembers is the look in its eyes as it fell, ribs showing, breath steaming in the frost. Oh. She cried then, not because she loved the cow, but because it was the last thing that gave. She does not cry now. There is no time, no use. The tears are buried deep, behind her eyes, behind her voice, behind the story she tells with every bowl she fills, that they will survive. She sits on the hearthstone and leans her head against the blackened brick. Her bones ache. Her blood is tired. Once her body was full of fire, of cycles, of seasons, of life. Now she feels like a tree whose fruit was picked too soon and too often. A single ember cracks in the ash. Spark. She watches it flicker, and for a moment she imagines it is enough. Enough to light a candle. Enough to start again. Enough to carry them through one more night. In the corner, the wind sighs like a woman praying through clenched teeth. The mother closes her eyes and rests, not asleep, not awake, just still. And beneath the cold silence of that cottage, a secret routs itself. Not hope, but something colder, older. A quiet vow passed from mother to daughter across the centuries. They will not remember my name, but they will remember that I endured. And in the dark, the spoon slips from her fingers and rests against the clay bowl with a hollow, ringing sound like a bell, too tired to judge, but still unwilling to forget. A velvet curtain, once drawn for warmth, now only filters the light, turning golden sun to sickened gray. Lady Eleanor does not move from her chair by the window. The scent of lavender clings to her like a mask, hiding the deeper truth that pools beneath her. A truth still wet, still red, still warm between her legs. Another child lost, another soul never named. The tapestry across from her shows women spinning wool, their fingers frozen mid-thread, their eyes stitched hollow. She has stared at it so long she dreams of them at night, mouths sealed, hands bleeding from the spindle. She wonders if they too bore silently, if they too were stitched into obedience. Behind her, the maid still stands, rigid and watchful, holding a silver dish. Cheese. Honey-dipped dates, sliced pears sugared just enough to tempt a dulled tongue. None of it touches her lips. The figs remind her of the blood, the honey of the lies. Food, once a pleasure, has become prophecy. The chamber is rich. Its walls are dressed in velvet and saints. Its floors are warmed with woven wool from Flanders. But beneath the perfume and wealth, Eleanor feels nothing but the stale ache of cold stone. The midwife said her womb is cold, that her blood is sluggish, her humor imbalanced. Too much fish, not enough warmth. So they prescribed capons, marrow broth, warm milk with crushed anise and thyme. 1,000 cures for a single unspoken wound. She has failed. In the great hall, her husband drinks heavily and speaks louder. She can hear the laughter through the walls. Knives scraping trenchers, men slapping backs, meat torn with greasy hands. They call it celebration, but it sounds like judgment. He does not come to her chambers anymore, not with softness, only with duty. When the stars align and the calendar approves. She has become a vessel, not a woman. It's a house for an heir that refuses to be born. The women of court call her gracious. The men call her barren. The priest calls her patient. Only she knows the truth. She is starving. She remembers faint and sudden, the burn of cherry pie on her tongue, when she was still a child, a reckless sweetness stolen from the kitchen hearth. The cook smacked her wrist and she had laughed. How long it has been since her mouth held laughter. Now, every bite is measured. Her appetite is a matter of concern. If she eats too little, the midwife frowns. Too much, the steward whispers. Her body is no longer hers. It belongs to the household, to the title, to the prayer she never asked for. A son. She touches her belly flat beneath the silk, and for a moment imagines a flutter, but it is only the echo of what could have been. The broth cools beside her. She lifts it to her lips, sips once, swallows. It tastes of bone and ash. Outside, a raven caws, sharp final. She flinches. Bells begin to ring across the courtyard. Vespers, the hour of shadows and silence.
Ow!
The sound drifts into the room like a curtain drawn tight around grief.
Ow!
She sets the cheese down, untouched, and turns to the maid. Her voice is low. Even here, she must not disturb the air too much. Bring barley water, she says. I want nothing sweet. The maid hesitates, then bows. Alina stays seated, eyes returning to the tapestry. One of the women has dropped her spindle. The thread dangles, unraveled. Perhaps no one else notices, but she does. And in that small unraveling, something stirs. Not rebellion, not yet. But a sliver of choice. To refuse the honey. To choose the bitter. To find dignity in the plain and quiet things. She sips again. It tastes like silence. And somewhere beyond the thick stone walls, a child cries in another wing. Alive, wanted, fed. Alina closes her eyes. It's not in prayer, in preservation. Tomorrow, they will ask what she ate. Tomorrow, she will lie. And tomorrow, she will endure. Rain presses its fingers harder against the shutters now. Not taps, but knocks. Steady, insistent rhythm, like a visitor the night cannot keep outside. Within the low stone infirmary, lit by a single flickering taper, the air carries the mingled scents of damp wool, boiled roots, and something more sacred, sorrow too old to name. On a narrow cot, the girl lies as still as relic bone. The monks do not know her name. They call her the waif, as if that erases what came before. The breath stolen in flight. The bruises hidden beneath her chemise, the hands that once gripped her shoulder too hard. Some whisper she was found among trees, barely conscious, a ribbon still tangled in her hair. Others say she was dumped at the abbey gate like a cursed offering. The fever grips her like possession. Her skin glows with sweat, but her limbs quiver with cold. Her lips are flaked and pale, the shape of prayers never spoken. Ours do not look at the room. They look beyond it, tracing the beams of the ceiling like constellations only she remembers. Perhaps she is counting stars, or perhaps she is listening for the voice that once sang her to sleep. A lay sister enters quietly, steps measured on the stone floor. Her robes are coarse, her veil wet at the hem. She carries a bowl of gruel, thick beige, nearly silent in its steam. It smells of barley and garlic, but also of humility. The sister places it gently by the girl's side, then leans in to brush strands of sweat-matted hair from her brow. Her touch is not maternal. It is monastic, duty laced with reverence. Her hands smell of vinegar and ash. She has washed the dying before. Food in this place is no luxury. It is what remains after the monks have taken their fill. Softened cheese rinds, carrots split and blackening at the edge. Bread so stale it must be soaked into broth before teeth dare it. But for the sick, it is salvation. For the girl, it is a reminder. She does not reach for it. She drifts instead into her old hunger, the hunger of memory. Apples roasted on an open flame, their skins blistering with caramel. Honeycomb broken open in her palm, sticky and golden, is still young, folding hers into warm dough, the scent of mint in the folds of her apron. Her throat tightens, not from illness, but from longing.
Oh.
She cannot recall her mother's face, only the feeling of being held without expectation. Outside, thunder murmurs. The candle shivers. A drop of rain finds its way through the stone and lands on her wrist. Cold, holy, she stirs, and then she smells it. Onion and salt. Familiar, earthly, alive. Her hand moves slow as a widow's sigh toward the bowl. Knocks the rim. The gruel spills, seeping into the blanket like lost grace. She gasps. It is not pain. It is the sound of something precious, fallen, and unrecoverable. The sister is there again. No exclamation, no scolding, only a silence that wraps around the moment like linen around a wound. She kneels and refills the bowl from a small clay pot. Steam rises once more. Heat returns. No words are exchanged. But in the girl's eyes something flickers. Not light, not yet. But the echo of it. A pulse beneath grief. A will not quite extinguished. The sister lays her palm against the girl's cheek. This is not ritual. This is defiance. Tenderness offered in a world that forgot how. The candle burns lower. Rain continues to strike the shutters. Tomorrow, they will say the fever broke. Or perhaps it worsened. But tonight, a bowl was offered twice. Someone, a child without a name, was not allowed to vanish hungry. In the shadows beyond the infirmary door, the wind carries the scent of mint. Almost imagined. Almost real.